Good morning or good afternoon, and welcome to this talk. The title is Third Order Dispersion in Optical Time Delay Systems, the case of mod-log VCSELs. And it's a work in collaboration with several people. For the theoretical part, it is between myself, Svetlana Gorevich, and Christian Schelted at the University of Münster and the University of Balearic Islands. And for the experimental part, Matthias Marconi, Patrice Carmelin, and Massimo Giudici at the Institut de Physique de Nice, as well as Arnaud Garnache, who developed the devices we were using in the experiments, and the Institut d'Électronique de Montpellier. Okay, so in the first part of the talk, that is about mod locking and in VCSELs, I will say a little bit what is mod locking. And mod locking typically relies on playing with the difference, the dynamical difference you can have between saturable gain and saturable absorptions. So here you see a typical situation giving rise to mod locking. When the pulse arrive in your system in the part that contain saturable losses, which is obtained usually inserting a device called a saturable absorber, you can deplete the losses. And then the losses in gray, they will recover on some time scale. The gain is also saturable, so you can see that the gain in red becomes depleted and then recovers also. And if it is easier to saturate the absorption than it is to saturate the gain, you can open a window of amplification in the vicinity of the pulses. Here you can see that the losses are smaller than the gain, therefore you have amplification. And in between pulses, this window of gain will basically shut off by itself, stabilizing the zero solution in between pulses. So in this system, you have a variety of time scale. You have the round trip tau, you have the absorber recovery time, tau SA. You also have the recovery time of the gain that we call the tau G, and you have typically the pulse width. And usually in mod locking, we are using this typical hierarchy. And the gain is slower than the round trip, that is slower than the absorber recovery time, that is slower than the pulse width. And what we did in this work is actually a little bit specific, but the results that we obtain, we believe, are interesting to the whole ensemble of mod locking parameters. We have been working in a regime of very long cavities, and actually in a regime where the cavity is longer than the gain recovery. And in this case, basically the pulses, they become dissipative solitons, they become localized structure, objects that we can turn on and off at will. But this is, let's say, something specific to the parameters that we use. But the results, you will see, are rather general. So, as I was saying, you have various limitations on the limits of mod locking. And in particular, normally you should not be able to make a very long cavity, because if your round trip is longer than the gain recovery, the red curve, you can see, will continue, and at some point it will cross again the level of the unsaturated losses. And in this case, you will generate a new pulses. But we found a way to overcome this limit. And we obtained in a regime where you have a gain chip face-to-face with a saturable absorber, and it's called the RSAM, Resonant Saturable Absorber Mirror. In this case, if you have a sufficiently strong absorption of the absorber, you can obtain a regime where all the pulses become multi-stable. So here you can see a regime where you have 1 pulse per round trip in A, 2 pulses per round trip, 3, 4 closely packed together in D, 4 equally spaced in E, and a variety of regimes. And usually it is thought that you cannot get mod locking below 1 GHz with semiconductor devices. In this case, it was 65 MHz. And since then, we have been able to make even longer cavities. So you have several references here if you are interested. And okay, from the point of view of the theory, we have been very successful in using a model that was not derived specifically for the system of absorber and gain face-to-face in microcavities and VCSEL and resonant saturable absorber mirrors. We've been using a more generic model that was for a ring mod lock laser. And I just want to attract your attention on the structure of the equation. Here you have an equation for the intracavity field A that is coupled to what was emitted at time t-2. So it's basically a delay differential equation that has the form of a first-order differential equation with losses, and then a feedback term from something that was emitted one round trip before. And the equation for the gain, G, and for the saturable absorber, Q, are rather generic, so I will not go into the details. Okay, and if you are interested in the details of this, the transition from mode locking towards the localized state, when you make the cavity longer, appears via a bifurcation scenario that we were able to explain. So for normal mode locking, for a short cavity on the left, mode locking appears as a supercritical up bifurcation. And when you make the cavity longer, for proper parameters, this branch of solution falls back and goes below the leading threshold. And you end up in a situation like you have in panel for tau equal 100, where the stable mode locking arrives below the leading threshold, that is at G equal to 1. Okay, so we were quite happy. We did the various analysis on this system, and with a good agreement from the theory, until the point where we found this very puzzling result experimentally that we were not able to explain. And I will attract your attention on the so-called space-time diagram that you have on the left. So it's not important here that there are two pulses, just please concentrate on one pulse. What do we show here? We show the time trace over one round trip horizontally, and then we stack all the various round trips on the vertical scale, okay? So what you can see is that there is a pulse in the cavity that is, okay, drifting, but this is not a big issue. It's just a problem of representation. So it is drifting a bit. And on the left, which means before in time, something else grows and eventually replaces the original pulse. So you have a pulse that is basically dying, that is being replaced by another pulse in front, and this sequence repeat and repeat. Okay. And if you have more than one pulse in the cavity, it seems that this sequence appears in antiphase. And we were quite puzzled by this result, and we could not find this in the model we were using. So we have been going back to the modeling, and I will show you the model that we have been using to reproduce this result. Okay. Yeah, as a side also result, when you go into this explosion of pulses, the optical spectrum becomes quite asymmetrical, and this is what you see on the right side. Okay. Okay. So what can you do to model this a bit more realistically than a ring laser? Well, there is actually a model that is not very well known or very widely used, that was developed actually by some colleagues of mine in 2005. And it is exactly for this situation, with a VCSEL microcavity that is coupled face-to-face with a saturable absorber. Okay, and we have been using this model, and eventually we reproduce the result that we have in the experiment. So I will show you that later. But in order to simplify a little bit the discussion, I will consider a simpler model. Okay, so you see, normally we should have two coupled microcavities face-to-face. But it just happened that the saturable absorber microcavity in our experiment is much wider. Typically, the absorber is 16 nanometer wide, while the resonant gain section is 1 nanometer wide. And as we are going to see, the source of this instability comes from chromatic dispersion, and chromatic dispersion is controlled by the most narrow of the two cavities. So what I'm going to do here is to take the absorber and put it in the gain section, and then I will end up with this situation that you can see here on the right, a situation that corresponds to something that exists that is called a mixel. And a mixel is a well-known device in which you put gain and saturable absorber, and you couple this microcavity to an external mirror in order to get mode locking. So as you can see, the situation is now a little bit more complicated, because you have one field, E, that is the intracavity field. You have the output of your cavity that we call O. And then you have an input that is coming back after some round trip and some reflection on some external mirror. So the proper way to deal with these various fields is simply to apply the proper boundary conditions, taking into account transmission and reflectivities at each interface. And after that, you can normalize your equations to get something that is a bit more easy to deal with, and you end up with a system like this. And in these equations, the important thing is the first and the third equation. The second equation are just equations for the population inversion in the gain and in the absorber, so it's very generic, nothing new here. What we have here in equation 1 is an equation for the intracavity field, in which you can see the presence of gain and Saturn absorption with population capital N and small n and alpha factor that we call alpha and beta. You have cavity losses, -1, and you have also a coupling of the external field into the microcavity. And this coupling is done via a coupling constant that we call H. I will come back to this in a moment. And then we have to couple this equation for the microcavity field to what's happening in the external cavity. Sorry. So how do we connect this? Simply, y of t, what is arriving in the cavity at time t, is the output of the laser that was emitted at time t minus tau, multiplied by eta that represents the reflectivity and the phase of the external mirror. And now the question, what is the output of the laser? O. It is simply a superposition of the field that is emitted and the field that is reflected. And you can actually scale out all the prefactors like reflectivity R, transmission T, R prime, T prime, all these kind of things. You can scale everything besides the minus that you have here, that just represents the pi phase shift that the incoming field is taking, making a reflection on the top dBr of the VXL. Okay. So you end up with a minus that is unremovable and a coupling constant H. Okay. Now, this equation, equation 3, you could actually think that you can iterate this equation, and you could look what is y of t minus tau. Okay, y of t minus tau, if I look at this equation, is eta times e of t minus 2 tau minus y of t minus 2 tau, and then you iterate again and again and again, and you will end up with a hierarchy of time delay, eta, eta square, eta cube, each time at t minus tau, 2 tau, 3 tau, etc., etc. So you could do this. And if you were in a situation in which you have a very low reflectivity of the external mirror, like in the case of optical feedback, that is a few percent of feedback, it would work. In our case, we are looking at a strong coupling with a mirror reflectivity that can be 90, 95%. And if you were to try to make an expansion like this, you will need to take hundreds of terms. So it's not a good idea, and it's a better idea to directly integrate equation 3 that has the structure of a delay algebraic equation. And this is the main difference between the model I showed you before for ring laser and this model here, is that the previous model was using delay differential equations, and this model is using delay algebraic equation. And the structure is different. Now, if you have, and this is the important part, if you have a normal Fabry-Perot cavity, okay, with two mirrors that are identical, this prefactor H is 1. Okay. If the top mirror is perfect, well, what does it mean perfect? It means that 100% reflectivity, so it means you cannot inject anything in this cavity. Therefore, H is equal to 0 and you don't have any coupling. It also makes sense. And there is a third regime that is actually the regime that most VCSELs are using. It is what happens when you have an excellent bottom mirror. This is usually done in order to favor the emission of the light in one direction, to not lose light by the substrate. So you usually have a bottom mirror that is much better than the top mirror. And in this case, this factor H goes to 2. And we operate in the regime, the so-called regime of the Gier-Tournois interferometer. And in this case, when you have a Gier-Tournois interferometer, it is known that these devices are sources of either second-order dispersion, or when you work at resonance, which is the case here, they are a source of third-order dispersion. And now I will show you a very quick video of what happens if in this system, I remove all the nonlinearities and I just look at what happens in a pulse circulating in an external cavity coupled to a microcavity that is operating in the Gier-Tournois region. So I take one Gaussian pulse and I show you what happens at each round trip. And what you can see is that at each round trip, there is a small satellite that is appearing on the left side of the pulse. And after 2 round trips, you have 3 satellites, 4 satellites, etc., etc. Okay. And if I do that with a pulse that is broader, of course, it will take more time, but you see exactly the same kind of phenomenon. Okay. And this is due to the superposition between the intracavity field and the external cavity field. Okay. So basically, this explains what we see in the experiment, and maybe a funny way to interpret what's happening is that in front of your pulse, there is a small satellite that is going to appear, and you could think that this small satellite is innocuous, it's not very dangerous, but it's going to eat the gain, because the gain is maximum in front of the pulse. Therefore, this small satellite that you can see, for example, here, will grow, and growing, it will deplete the gain, and therefore it will kill the gain for the parent pulse. So this pulse at the back will die, and then the sequence will repeat itself. So you can see it's one of the cases where the small guy is winning over the big guy. So hence the picture of Caravaggio with David and Goliath. Okay, so each pulse, each small pulse will kill the dominant pulse and then will be killed again by another small pulse in front of him. So it's a kind of a murder story of pulses. Okay, and now I'm just showing you the exact same result, not for the mixel, but for the VXLR SAM when you have two coupled cavities. And you can see that although it's a bit deformed, you can see the same kind of explosion and oscillation of the pulse intensity. And the optical spectrum is also quite asymmetrical, which is something you can see on the right. And these results were published a year ago. You have the reference here if you are interested. Now, very quickly, a little bit of the theory that is behind that. What we have been demonstrating is that this dispersive behavior is not possible to obtain this with a delay differential equation. So what did we do? We took a generic linear delayed system with two coefficients A and B, okay? And we put on the left-hand side a matrix M that can be potentially singular. And when this matrix becomes singular, you go from a regime of delay differential equation to delay algebraic equation. Okay. And what we have found is that there is actually only one possibility for which you need 2 degrees of freedom. So you need your V to be a vector with two components. And there is only one way to get an eigenvalue spectrum that is purely imaginary, which would correspond to having only dispersion. Okay, and these coefficients, this matrix A and B, actually they do exactly correspond to the system I showed you before for the mixel. And you see these two here, the 2 is H equal to 2 from the Girard-Tournois regime, the -1 is the photon losses, etc., etc. So if you look at the equation I showed you before, it's exactly this. And if you do that, you can actually show that the eigenvalue spectrum that is in blue here becomes purely imaginary, while the eigenvalue spectrum of the ring delay model has a parabolic shape. Yeah, so it's a system that is in red, that is strongly diffusive. And in our case, the system is essentially dispersive. Okay, so both systems are giving third-order dispersion, that is plot on the right. So they are giving similar amount of third-order dispersion and second-order dispersion. But in the ring model, you also have a lot of diffusion. And this diffusion is taking, basically is killing all the potential dynamics before dispersion can have a role to play. Okay. So very quickly, we were able to reconstruct the equivalent PDE, or let's say the Hauss equation for this kind of mixel system. And you will have more details about this in the talk of my collaborator, Svetlana Gurevich. I think the code name is LD02, so it should be the next talk in the same session. And what we've been able to show is that if you would write a Hauss equation, the operators for the field would be different. And you can see the typical difference is that in a ring model, or in general in a model based on delay differential equation, you have diffusion. And this diffusion, okay, it has a physical meaning. It corresponds to an optical filter that is put in the cavity. So if you put an optical filter, it's not a big surprise that you would get diffusion for the field, because it plays a role of the bandwidth limiting element. In our case, a pure mixel cavity would not have any diffusion, and it will be dominated by the next order term, that is third order dispersion. Okay. So as a summary, we gave evidence of a new instability for pulses in mod-log laser in a long cavity, and this is due to third order dispersion. And this is a rich behavior that you can only describe by using a model based on the algebraic equations. So again, here's the references. There are various perspectives of this. First, how to make a bifurcation analysis of the algebraic equation. It's something that is a work in progress, and it's apparently a little bit beyond the current state of the art, but it should be possible. We also are very interested in seeing the influence of third order dispersion in a normal mod-log regime, let's say in a regime where the cavity is not longer than the gain recovery time, so typical 1 GHz, 10 GHz mod-locking, and not 10 MHz mod-locking. And we will also be very interested in writing the proper Hauss master equation for coupled microcavities. So it's something we were able to do for a single microcavity, for a mixed cell. For two coupled microcavities, it seems to be a little bit more complicated, but it's a nice, interesting problem. And with that, I will thank you for your attention. Thank you.